Wow. Anandita, thank you so much. My name's Paul. I'm an addict. Did you say don't quote from the book? The book. I thought you said something about not quoting from the book. That leaves me with nothing to share about. The book is our program. The book is our program, right? So you know what? I'm Paul. I'm an addict. I was speaking to my sponsor last night, and he said, "Have you heard this one? The opposite of addiction is connection." Have you heard that said in meetings? You know, there's a lot of stuff. Just he says, "Can you find that for me in the book?" And I was searching and I couldn't find it anywhere. He said, "You know what the opposite of addiction is? Narcotics Anonymous." Well, I thought that'll make a good T-shirt. Score out the, you know, he's like, I don't need a TED talk or a dual diagnosis or Jordan Peterson or, you know, I've got Narcotics Anonymous, you know, and hearing the clean time there is incredible to me. Because if you're Martin, it's so good to see you. You know, Martin, I've connected, I don't know, over the last few months, haven't heard from you for a while. He just messaged me like minutes before this meeting, come on this meeting, the willingness, you know, and 5 days is amazing, and well done everyone on your clean time. I think I've got, well, I'll tell you what I've got 679 days, which means that I will be 2 years on March 27th, so next month, and I'm going through a bit of a transition period. This is what I love about recovery. It's constantly up for revision, right? There's so many different ways of doing this stuff. And I felt that coming up for 18 months, it was 18 months, and I felt I wasn't making the spiritual breakthrough that you know I thought I should be making. You know, I was giving myself a lot of self-congratulatory pats on the back. Well done, Paul. You do so much service. You're always chairing meetings, starting meetings, basic text workshops, and all these things. But I didn't feel. Yeah, I just didn't feel it was changing. So I love the fact that this stuff is continuously up for revision if we want it to be. You know, stuff wasn't working for me. I think I'd stopped looking. I think I'd stopped looking at recovery through the here and now. You know, I kind of I convinced myself that I was no longer the ultimate problem, which I am, right? I'm the ultimate problem, and you guys are the ultimate weapon. But what was happening with me was I was looking at all you guys and thinking, I'm not as crazy as them. I'd heard a guy, he was like 27 years, and he was sharing in a meeting about how he looks in the mirror every morning and says, "You're a piece of shit, you're this, you know, you're that." And I thought, God, I don't identify with that. That guy sounds crazy to me, because he's been presumably working a program for 27 years. Where is the solution? And I realized that this kind of attitude, this lack of compassion, this indifference towards spiritual principles was separating me. So before I get into where I am, see if you've, you know, I heard someone mention overdose there. You know, we're not interested in what or how much you used, you know, but we kind of are. I was anyway when I was coming back. I was quite interested in what drugs you used. I try not to talk about it too much. I try not to mention specific drugs today. But if you've overdosed, if you've stolen your mum's wedding ring and taken it to the pawn shop, if you've seen someone overdose and try to revive them for 5 seconds, then they've died and then just carried on using, you know, I identify that's where my disease took me. And I've just got to be careful that I remember that I suffer from an incurable disease, and that I will never know enough. And I constantly have to work at this stuff. God, what to share? It's so lovely to be here. You know, can I talk about this platform? You know, this platform has opened me up to a breadth and depth of recovery that I didn't know existed. It's beautiful. Anandita, I first heard her share at a Sussex convention, and that was amazing. And to be here in India, even virtually, is powerful. You know, it's really, really powerful. And this is the kind of stuff that I like to do on a daily basis. So I came in 2 years ago. It was like the stars had aligned, because the week before I got clean, NA had moved onto this virtual platform. I know meetings had been going virtually before, and I know there was all kinds of stuff online, but in a kind of, in the way that it's taken off, it just started middle of March 2020. And I suppose I was abstinent. You know, this is the most important spiritual principle, you know, before we start step one, abstinence. You know, I had a bit of freedom from the pain. I'd been coming to NA since 2005 was my first meeting. If you're one of those addicts who has been coming to NA for years and has got to the point where you don't believe it will work for you, I identify. You know, I was watching all my peers get clean, multiple years clean, and I just couldn't get it. And I wasn't one of those addicts that stayed away from meetings. My buddies would say to me, my using buddies would say, I can't understand why you're turning. What are you going to those NA meetings for? And I think I got the hope in my very first meeting that I'd gone to. I'd been kicked out of treatment back in 2005 for the kinds of things that you get kicked out of treatment for, using, being too interested in the opposite sex, climbing up drain pipes into the windows of girls, that kind of thing. So they threw me out, right? And as I was getting thrown out, someone said, phone this guy. His name's Mark. I was in London, and he took me to a meeting. I was off my rocker. I was high as a kite, and I went to the meeting. It was a lunchtime meeting, and it was all guys from the city of London. They all worked in banking. They were all very smart in suits, and I'm like, street level, street looking junkie at this point. But the warmth that I got, I don't know if any newcomers feel it in the meeting today or you felt it in any recent meetings. The warmth that I felt was, it broke through the drugs, and it connected with my heart, you know. And these guys were texting me and they were phoning me, and I didn't stay clean. But and I think this is really important, if you're an addict like me who drifted away from meetings, then would come back to meetings, would get 30 days and then pick up again, or get 90 days. I remember being in a meeting once, 29 days, a guy was sharing, and I shared back to the speaker, and I was so fired up from the share and what he'd said, and the hope and the promise of a new life. And I said, I pick up 30 days tomorrow, and nothing will stop me from getting that 30-day keyring, and then left the meeting and used that night. So I speak to people and I say, why do you think it is this time that I've managed to put these months together? What's changed? And I suppose I heard very early on this time, someone pulled me aside and said, Paul, you know, it's the principles that make our recovery possible. And we hear that in the readings at the start. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that's read in the cards, we hear it, we're so familiar with it. Familiarity breeds contempt. We're quite contemptuous of the cards. I am, you know, it just washes over us without listening. And I've been in meetings for years and I hadn't heard that line. It's the principles that make our recovery possible. So having that first spiritual principle of abstinence, someone else thinks it might have been the absence of pain, because I was in that constant pain and confusion and doing things that weren't good for my recovery, like relationships, like, oh, I'm 30 days clean now, I need to get back to work. What I have had to do this time is say, I'm taking 2 years out of work. Well, I'm coming up for 2 years. Maybe I'll be able to push it to 3 years. I need to take time out and focus on my recovery. That's me. I'm like, I don't want to say I'm the sickest guy in the room, but I'm a sick, suffering addict. And I need to heal deeply. on a daily basis. I need to ask for help on a daily basis. And that's, I got to the point at 18 months of doing meetings every day. So I was doing five, 6 meetings a day on Zoom. What a gift. I can go anywhere. I can hear all kinds of different experience. Going to the US meetings was a real kind of eye-opener. Meeting people like, I heard Alan share from Boston, and through Alan met Paula. And I know this is an anonymous program. I hope you'll forgive me for naming names. But hearing these guys who were 3 decades, coming up for 4 decades clean, and hearing their stories, and something really moved inside of me. And everyone on this platform has been so willing. You know what? I became so willing myself that I was in every meeting I was in almost. I was putting my number in the chat and saying, here's my number. Does anyone want to connect? Does anybody want to help me? And it's great because, you know, Paula and I don't speak every single day now, but we pop up in meetings at least every few weeks or a couple of months, you know, and these relationships are building every time we meet. So I know why people say connection is the opposite of addiction, because I love the connection we've made, but this program has been incredible. So I must have got to the point in my using where I'm in a using den. Me and the girl that I love, 2 mad using addicts, this beautiful crack user. Well, I've mentioned a drug, right? And we were madly in love, and I'd proposed to her on the stairwell of the high-rise flats. You know, a real kind of awful scene. You know, chaos was our flatmate. You know, and you should have seen the state of the kitchen. And this girl's going out to sell herself every single night. This girl I love, and I'm watching this, and I love her more than I'm obsessed with her. And she's going out, and I'm going out with her to watch her back, you know, to protect her, you know, complete and utter insanity. I promise you, that's not the person I am. That's not even the person I was before the drugs really, really took hold. There was nothing I wouldn't have done to get the drugs. And then when she got the money, which was enough for our 2 drugs of choice, we would go back and use, and we would repeat that process day after day. It was Groundhog Day. I don't know about you guys. I got to the point where I wanted to die. I got to the point where I wanted to kill myself, and tried, and I was saved. But that was the abject desperation I was at. So maybe that had something to do. Maybe I had to get to that point before I was prepared to do whatever was necessary. I nearly said whatever I was told, right? So this is the process I'm in at the moment. I've got a new sponsor, and he's all about equality. He's all about, in fact, the first thing he said to me was, Paul, will you help me read step 1? And he's a line numbered basic text guy. So every single day at 9:30 UK time, which is a completely different time where he is in the world, we read the line numbered basic text. For those guys that don't know what it is, they were doing it by hand at first, you know, 1 line, 1, next line, 2, and he'll read a line, then I will read a line, then he will read a line. And then what we do is we pick a few lines that we've identified without the 50 or 80 lines we've read, and we share back. Now, the premise of this is that it's getting away from, so if this is a we program, this is his rationale. If this is a we program, why are we telling people, why are we sending people off to do the steps on their own and telling them to get back to us with the questions in a couple of months? So the point of this is, by reading together, we are working the steps in their entirety. So as we read and as we share together, it's a meeting. So we've got the power of the meeting. We've got the therapeutic value of one addict helping another. We're activating step 1 with the honesty. I'm cat with a laser pen. Step 3, can you think of anything greater than turning to the literature, than turning to God? Step 4, we're inventorying all the time. I was sharing stuff the other day about getting a bit lustful, you know, getting NA crushes in meetings, hearing women sharing things. She's my latest NA crush. I love her message. Oh my God, going into fantasy. The disease is activated. So I was doing a bit of sexual inventory the other day on 4, and it just came up through the stuff we shared. I'm looking at my defects. I'm doing active listening and active sharing, step 11, and we're carrying the message to each other. So the whole premise of reading the line numbered basic text is about healing deeply in the here and now, real-time recovery, activating all the steps at the same time. So this is the way I'm going through the steps with my new sponsor. We're doing it through the line numbered basic text. There's side projects going on. I'm making a step 8 list at the moment. And it's really, really powerful. It's got me fired up. It's got me really, really fired up. I'd forgotten that my drugs of choice today are control, self-righteousness, resentment. It takes a lot of work for me to identify these feelings. I know the reading that we just did was about feelings and coping with feelings. I couldn't cope with anything. I couldn't cope with life. So what's the program giving me? Let's look at this. What's the program giving me? So I wasn't this handsome vision that you see before you today, Anandita. I was like 9 stone. I don't know what that is in kilos, but 60 something kilos. I was shattered. I'd lost all confidence in myself. Yeah, completely broken. You know, I'll tell you a little bit about myself because I think I've got time. I worked as a journalist. I was a Fleet Street journalist. I was a political journalist. So if you guys, I've been India a couple of times, actually. I've been India a couple of times with the British Prime Minister. And the whole time I was doing that, I was in this very prestigious job. The whole time I was doing that, I was trying to integrate the drugs, you know, so that meant taking drugs on planes to India. I remember when I shared in a meeting, oh my God, I smuggled heroin on the Prime Minister's plane. And the whole meeting went, yay, like that. I'm like, wow, I'm accepted here. I've been accepted. But what I kept doing was getting sacked from jobs and thinking, right, we can erase that part of things and we can move on. There was no time for recovery. You know, there was no time for recovery. I just had to lose myself in the denial. You know, I've heard it said, I think it's in the book, I don't know where, that the disease, denial is the disease's way of staying anonymous, you know, and I was really caught up in denial. You know, as long as I could have girlfriend, as long as I could have the house, as long as I could have the prestige job, I would be all right. And the last job I got, right, so I remember I'm not even clean. I think I'd maybe got onto some kind of opiate replacement and I'd applied for a job. And the guy who was later to become my sponsor was visiting Aberdeen. And he came into my mum and dad's house where I was. And I'm on the phone being interviewed for a job as the head of communications for the mayor of Manchester, running a team of 30 people, something like that. And I'm like a half shut knife. I'm a wreck. I'm like a train wreck. I'm like a train wreck on board the Titanic that's being struck by a meteor. You know, I'm just so like out there. And he's saying to my dad, what's he doing? And my dad's saying, yeah, he's on his like 3rd interview for this job. It looks like he's going to get this job. There's a point to this story. So I get the job. I move to Manchester. I take over the team. You know, I'm introduced to the mayor. It's a very high profile. He's on the television every day. I'm writing his press statements. I'm dealing with all kinds of government officials at local and national level. And I'm telling you, within 24 hours of landing in Manchester, I'd found a guy begging. I'd found out how to score. He had a mate who had a house, and every single lunchtime I was going up there and using and not quite making it back, you know, and my team are phoning me up going, where the hell are you? You've got a meeting with the mayor, right? Because I'm in so much denial, when I took this job, I forgot that I had 5 or 6 drug charges hanging over me from my last using thing. So when I'm convicted in the courts for possession or whatever it was, the press office, the media office that I was running, received a phone call from the newspaper in Aberdeen saying, oh, the mayor's spin doctor has just been convicted in Aberdeen of possession. Have you got a comment? So now my boss is coming to me going, what the actual fuck? This isn't the same guy, is it? This isn't the same guy sat in the suit in the tie, sitting. And I'm like, yeah, it's bollocks. Yeah, but it is me. It is me they're talking about. But you know what? I had a girlfriend who's an addict and I was just keeping the drugs for her. They were like, get out, get out. The court are so pissed off that I haven't come back in person to be convicted in person, that I've pled by letter, that they've recalled me the following week. So I've got to appear in person. So all these guys that I'm friends with in the media, the photographers and the journalists, when I step out the court, there's a huddle of about 20 guys outside the court taking my photo. It's like paparazzi time. And I'm like, oh, hi, Chris. Hi, John. Hi, how are you doing? And it's just the walk of shame, you know, getting your photograph taken coming out the court. You can Google me. If you find out my last name, you can Google me. This is why I'll probably never work in the media again, because it's all over the internet, right? The shame that shame probably kept me using for another year. So it was important when I came into recovery that I worked through the humongous amounts of baggage that I was carrying. And I didn't know before I came back this time that the principles that make our recovery possible are embedded in each of the steps. And the writing of step one, while very codependent, because a lot of it was about me and I was speaking a lot of victimese, and I was blaming a lot of other people. We were doing step one last night, actually, and there was a lot of that came up. You know, us addicts are great at blaming everyone else. I had to free myself from the baggage. I was talking about my step four as well last night. Wow, what a moment that was. If you're new and you haven't worked to step four and you're still blaming people for your addiction, or you're blaming people for what they did to you, and I'm sure people have done terrible things to you. When I wrote my step four, it was like a explosion in my mind. It was like, it's all me. This is all me. In fact, that guy who I thought did that to me, I owe him an amends. There was a dramatic inversion. So I don't know how long have I got left, Andy. I feel like I've been taking this meeting hostage for a while. 5 minutes, something like that. You can unmute. 10 minutes, okay. So I'm sharing a lot of stuff in this meeting that I've never shared anywhere before. It says honest sharing is the antidote to our disease. So the place I'm trying to get from now is, Paul, you do great service. You come from a public relations background. That means that you can transfer all that energy and skill into Narcotics Anonymous. So I'm very keen on PI and PR and NA. What I'm not so keen on these days is the coming out of a very controlling relationship with the man who was the most important person in my life when I came into recovery. It got a little bit controlling for me, and I was involved with service committees, which I found a little bit controlling. The rebel started to come out in me, you know, and I felt disempowered, and I felt my home group was disempowered. So I'm going through this process now of the best service I can do. The best service I'm sure any of us can do is help a newcomer. Help a newcomer. You know, I'm looking for newcomers, by the way. I want to do what my sponsor's just done with me. Paul, can you sponsor me today? He said, can you sponsor me just for today? You are the ultimate weapon for me. And can you help me read step one from the line numbered basic text? If there's any newcomers who want to read with me, that's where the power is. You know, it's so powerful, because what I find is when I read on my own, my mind drifts off. I'm reading, like, no, I must memorize this. I must memorize this bit because that'll sound really good when I share it in a meeting. And then my mind drifts off. By reading together, we're recovering in real time. We're really, and it takes about, Martin, I saw you put your thumbs up. It takes about 90 days to read the basic text from cover to cover when we're doing it nightly for an hour or 45 minutes. And then we start that process all over again. And then we start it all over again. And I'm told that when you do this repeatedly, continuously, that the program really starts seeping in, you know, and it becomes less about me thinking, right, what am I going to share in Calcutta today? How am I going to entertain Calcutta today? How am I going to, you know, tell a really bad war story and then show off about how great I am in recovery and how much service I do? I just want to, you know, we are the basic text, you know, we are the literature. I'm told that the basic text is particularly special because every single line was prayed over by the guys that put it together. It's a spiritual document, I believe. So you guys are my higher power. The literature is my higher power. I had to look at what is serving the function of God for me. God is all over our literature, and it's not a religious program, and we've got the choice. We've got the choice, which is great. What is shaping my actions and my perspective on a daily basis, effectively serving the function of God for me? It's a hierarchy of values and principles that were lost to me until I just rediscovered the program of Narcotics Anonymous, or discovered it in a meaningful way that it could impact on my life. I'll just finish this, you know, I've got so much peace today, you know, I've got so much peace knowing that, first of all, I've got the diagnosis. It's really a great relief to know that I'm an addict. It's even better to know that there's a solution to what I suffer from. This is a guy who can get a minute. I was just checking my clean time counter. I'm coming up for 1 million minutes clean. You know, as soon as I'd scored and got the drugs in my hand, I was thinking, how am I going to get money for the next one? You know, I was 24/7 for decades, you know, and it almost wiped me out, but it didn't. And now I've got a great chance at life today. You know, my life is getting busier and busier. I'm still not working, but because I've learned a few principles in NA, I believe integrity, according to our book, is the consistent application of spiritual principles. You know, honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, kindness, compassion, flexibility, communication, sharing, abstinence. The stuff I've learned in NA in the last couple of years, I've been able to take out. So I volunteer 3 nights a week as a youth worker at a boxing club. I used to box as a kid, and myself and my dad go up there and we work with deprived youngsters, highly autistic youngsters, kids from traveling communities, you know, kids who, there was one the other night who I said, how are you getting on at school? And he said, I'm doing really well. And I said, oh, your mum must be so proud of you. And he looked at me and my parents don't ask me how I get on at school. You know, so because of NA bestowing these gifts onto me, I'm able to now serve my community, you know, society, part of the quadrant of our symbol. I'm able to take, I thought I had it all. I thought I was journalist, traveling with the Prime Minister, first class, India, Pakistan, South America, the White House, Russia, all these places. And, you know, I was so empty inside. The way I used to describe it was my head and my heart weren't connected. I don't know if anyone can identify that. I was lost. And slowly over the past couple of years, by coming to meetings, by doing service, by reading the literature with someone else, that's the important part, by seeking a power greater than me, by constantly striving to learn about what I suffer from and where the action and the application is to offset, you know, what's the manifestation today of my disease? You know, when I do step work now, it won't be looking back at my war stories from 2 years ago. It'll be looking at the here and now. What's the manifestation of my disease today and how do I treat it? And I can't, as I'm sharing, I cannot believe that Narcotics Anonymous offers me all of that, an antidote, the ability to arrest what I suffer from, which is, remember, selfish in nature, which is negative in nature, which is fatal, and offers me a new way to live, you know. And I am so, so grateful for this program. I'm more passionate about Narcotics Anonymous and what it offers me than anything. And I would a debt of gratitude that I will never be able to repay. That's me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing me to share.